Town Council meeting of August 5th, 2019 to order with a moment of silent meditation and salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. I need a motion to sit as a licensing board. All those in favor?
Aye. I'll second that.
Special event permit. Open a hearing on an application for a special event permit filed by Jennifer Johnson of Holly Tree Campground to hold one musical entertainment event for the campers on the following date, Saturday, August 31st, 2019. The event will be held at the Camp Pavilion at Holly Tree Campground, located at 109 Ashaway Road, Ashaway, from 6:30 p.m. to 10:30 p.m. The event is not open to the public. I see she's here.
Hi.
Hello.
I know we ask every year, but we always ask every year. How many years you've been doing this?
The music?
Yeah.
Oh, I mean, I don't know. 3 years goes by in a blink. I think it's
Probably about 20
try to
years.
make it.
my father's been 12 years, so it's probably been about 10 or 11 years now. Yeah.
Okay. Lisa, everything's complete?
Yeah.
As far as the application?
Yeah.
Okay.
Motion to vote to approve the application. Second.
Okay. Motion made and seconded. Any further discussion on it?
As I say, I remember Tony Petrizzo, and he was a likable fellow, and he's missed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Anyone out in the public wishing to be heard on this matter? Okay. A motion was made and seconded. No further council discussion. Having heard none, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, folks.
Have a good time.
Thanks.
Next up, multi-event permit. Open a hearing on an application for a multi-event permit for a series of 3 free Music in the Valley concerts filed by Christine Anderson on behalf of the Friends of the Hopkinton Land Trust, scheduled for Saturday, July 13th, 2019, Saturday, August 10th, 2019, and Saturday, September 14th, 2019, from 4 p.m. to 7 p.m. to be held at Depot Square Park, 1 Mechanic Street, Hope Valley, identified as Assessors Plat 27, Lot 176. This is a continued matter. I think Christine wasn't here last time. The applicant present?
Yes.
Yes. Yes. Well, everything's complete, Lisa?
Yes, there is one waiver request. It's been advertised, and if I notice given, the price for the ad was $92.25. In the past, when you've granted waivers, you've also authorized that money to come from council contingency, and I'm certain that's what you want to do this time, or you'll just go on my way.
No, I think we should come to council contingency. It's an event that we support and appreciate that they do this. So I hope that we grant their request and that the $92 come from council contingency. Second.
Yeah, motion made and seconded. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
I'm glad you have it for so many people.
It's great fit. Thank you.
Motion to adjourn this licensing board meeting, council.
So moved.
Motion made and seconded. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Consent agenda. Approved town council meeting minutes of July 15th, 2019. Executive session minutes of July 1st, 2019. Set September 3rd, 2019 as the first meeting in September due to Labor Day holiday. Approve abatements resulting from tangibles, motor vehicle, and real property adjustments 2016, 17, 18, and 19 submitted by the tax assessor. Approve refund as a result of overpayment of 2018 motor vehicle payment submitted by the tax collector. Approve petition of National Grid and Verizon for a joint pole and anchor on Woodville Road.
I'm all set with everything.
I had one question, but Lisa answered it already about that planning board member's name. It was actually SAC. So I'm good.
Okay, motion to approve the consent agenda is ready.
Second. Sorry.
Okay, motion made second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. All right, first public forum. Anyone out there wishing to be heard? All right.
Joe Moreau, Old Depot Road. I just wanted to thank the DPW. They've been working out in that hot weather on Woodville Alton Road, cutting down those dead trees. It's very obvious they've taken down an awful lot of trees, and I think they should get credit for doing that. I was doing some research on the town's website, and I looked at the Conservation Committee. I wasn't really familiar with that committee. I started from January 2nd of 2016 to July 17th, 2019. What I found for each date was just the agenda. I never saw any videos, which I understand because there are other committees that don't have videos, but I could not find any minutes of the meeting. And I thought that was odd because there's only so many meetings you can go to. I always rely on looking at the minutes of the meeting. And when all the other commissions, boards have minutes of the meeting, I don't understand why we don't have that. The Affordable Housing Partnership Committee had a couple of meetings with minutes, but for the most part, the Conservation Committee has nothing at all. And there's a budget of $4,500, and I'd like to know where my money is being spent and the rest of the taxpayers. Why would they not have minutes of the meeting? Can anyone answer that? How can I get an answer?
They do, I know you want it on the website, I'll have to talk to Lisa with Mark.
Thank you.
Am I allowed to respond?
Well, yeah, just very briefly, Lisa, is
Lisa
obviously.
should be able to respond.
Well, she can also talk
She has
on
no
the phone.
meetings problem.
Well, there are the town's website does include oftentimes most of the agendas for sure, and then meeting minutes. Over time, some boards and commissions had been filed, and gradually they are one by one coming on board. They are filing with the Secretary of State's office. They are obligated under the law to file them in the Secretary of State's office in order to get them, if the council really wishes them to be on the website, I'm sure that we will, yes, make an outreach to them and we can have them do so. But they are compliant. They are filing the open records in accordance with the agendas and the minutes. So the agendas are filed, the minutes have not been filed on the town's website. That doesn't violate any open meeting law. I'd be happy to reach out to them and ask if they start forwarding their minutes as approved to risk.
Someone can do that. Let's not get a full-blown
So
discussion.
we won't have a full-blown discussion, but it's important for the credibility of the town government to, as much as possible, since we live in an electronic age, nothing is posted. Because otherwise people will suspect things that might be innocent. So it's crucial that we do post those things.
When the Recreation Department, thank you, Lisa. When the Recreation Department has the information available, affordable housing, it just seemed odd that I can't get up to speed on the Conservation Committee. That's my main point. Again, there were issues recently with the town calendar. The planning board meeting for Wednesday, August 7th was on the calendar with the meeting scheduled for the town hall, as it normally is here. I was in Monday of last week speaking with Jim Lamphere, and I said, I'll see you Monday at the town hall for the planning board meeting. Jim said to me, oh, it's moved to the middle school. And I said, it's at the middle school, not according to the town calendar. He said, well, we'll put signs on the doors over here to notify people. So I said, I would go over and speak to Lisa, which I did. She took care of it real quick, because when I checked, what's that? She did take care of it real quick. My point, I guess, is this is the 5th time that there's been issues with this agenda. And I talk to people every day, whether it's face-to-face, whether it's emails. People look to, as Scott pointed out, they look to the town and the town's website for their information. I don't know of too many people. I'm sure there's a few that go to the Secretary of State's website, which is fine, but they're relying on the town's website. I had received an email from someone this week, and it had the agenda for tonight's meeting. And I was looking at some items on there, and I thought it was great. So I went to the town's website, trying to print the agenda and look at the agenda for this meeting. It wasn't there. The agenda was not on our website. I looked Sunday morning at 8 a.m. It was not on our website. I looked at Sunday night at 9 p.m. and the agenda was not on our website. I had a doctor's appointment early this morning, so I didn't get back till 1 o'clock, and I looked and the agenda was on the website. I'm not being picky.
I gotta respond.
Okay.
When an agenda is filed with the Secretary of State's office, automatically goes to the front page of the town's website. So it is on the town's website. It is on the front page. You have to click on it. You've got to click on the link, and it is there.
I did. It went to the Secretary of State.
Right.
Right, that's my point. How many people go to the Secretary of State? It should,
Why
in my
don't you
opinion.
follow the link?
It's a link. It's a
link.
link.
I know, I went
And
to the
it's right
Secretary
there.
of State,
And it's
and when I went there, it wasn't available.
Well,
My
I
whole
don't,
point is,
I don't know why. And that's
residents-
very frustrating to me as well.
residents look to our town's website, and when the planning board meeting for Wednesday of this week is on there, and it's highlighted in blue, you should be able to click on a meeting for a Monday night and have it. It's not there.
So obviously it's not.
I'm not trying to argue, I'm trying to make a valid
we
point.
can't have a full vote.
I know, I know.
That's not being found and why I can see it and why I think you can't.
I think someone's missing the point, because if it's not on the town's website, it's not there. I don't care about the Secretary of State when people look at our website for info. I can't even tell on our website who's on committees, boards, and commissions. Town council is listed. When you try to find out who's on a conservation committee, you can't find it. I couldn't even find it on the agenda. I found it on a workshop, January 29th of 2018. That's how I knew who was on that commission. Gary Marsh, and, you know, all these other folks that are on there, but it's not on our website. Third point I want to mention is the rescheduling of hearings. You know, this just goes on and on. Atlantic Solar, 6 hearings scheduled. They rescheduled 5 of them. Started somewhere in November. It'll be October before we hear that. When the application is submitted, the clock starts for the town. You have 45 days, you have 90 days. My opinion is that it should be the same for the developer. Why do these developers continue to postpone hearings and they go on and on? It's just incredible. You've got residents out there wondering what's going on. There was a hearing scheduled last year, October 15th. This was packed. Lisa tried to make the point that it's going to be too crowded here. The meeting was scheduled here for the 15th of October. Had to move it to October 22nd. Middle school. Attorney's not here, not there. He's out of the country. That law firm has one attorney to reschedule it for people again. I could not get the subject of the Stubbtown Road dump on the agenda for discussions last year. I'm trying to get revenue and help the town. I couldn't get it on the agenda. I was told that there'd be a workshop for that in January. That never happened. I want to thank Bill and Jim for the work that they've been doing to go through the process with the DEM and get that whole thing started. I brought up about flagpoles for revenues for the town, putting cell phone carriers in those flagpoles. Haven't heard a word, not one word. Last August, I mentioned it was told to me, Ian Walsh from Newport Renewables, and Sharon took care of this, was interested in solar on Stubbtown Road dump, and she checked into it. And I believe that's how we're processing with this. My whole point of bringing these things up is Steve Wheel was one of the first residents to speak on the Old Depot Road project. And Steve brought up the point about the unfairness of the whole process. And he was absolutely right in what Steve said. The problem is, it's gotten worse since then. You just can't find out information. You can't, it's no easy way to get information. I guess my last question would be is, how do I find out who is on these boards and commissions?
Ask Lisa.
Check with Lisa.
Lisa will have a list.
She has the boards and
And
commissions.
it's never been on the website, ever. Wasn't something that was ever thought of, or whether it was appropriate, never
I
thought
don't
of.
know. Figure out a mechanism to put them, post them on there, their names. That'd be sufficient.
I think so, yeah.
You know, I understand it's a very difficult job that you're doing and the town employees are doing, and I appreciate the hard work.
And Lisa's short-handed and has been for
I
months.
realize that, and I've said it before. Lisa is straight out, as well as the employees that work for Lisa. They try their best.
Mhm.
But when you have 5 or 6 issues with the town calendar, when you have so many of these things, if it happens once in a while, no big deal. But it's a repeated thing that goes on and on and on. And when people call me and say, Joe, when's the meeting? You know, and I'm telling them it's 7 o'clock on Wednesday, you know, here for the planning board meeting. And then I find, wait a minute, it's at the middle school. Now, who did I tell? Let me look at my list. I'm going to call them back and say, wait a minute, it's at the middle school. It's just, you can tell, it's frustrating. It's not fair to our paying citizens to put them through so much to get a simple answer. Where is the meeting? Thank you.
Thanks. Okay. Yes, sir.
I'm glad Joe brought that up. I just want to echo some of those concerns. I want to say, as I'm sure Joe thinks also, that Lisa has been incredibly responsive to every form of request, so I don't think it's not an issue with the town clerk. I do think it's customary in almost every town that I've ever seen a website for. You know, I obviously haven't seen every one, but I don't think I've ever seen a town website that doesn't list members of committees. And typically, for every committee, there is a contact email. It might be an administrative contact, it might be the chair of the committee, but it is extremely odd to have committees and have no way for the constituents that they serve to even know the names of the people on the committee. Some of them could be in their neighborhood, you know, it could be a way, it discourages engagement from people in town. So I think we should definitely do that. And then I think some of the, this issue of where the minutes can be found for various committees, when there is something relatively recent, a lot of time, or it's upcoming, let's say it's an agenda for this meeting, and it was last Friday or yesterday or today or something. On the left-hand side, there's frequently a link for an upcoming meeting. But if you go to the menu item at the top for agenda and minutes, that's what Joe's talking about. If you click on agenda and minutes and you see the entire calendar going back to January of 2016, that's where most people would expect to go find the conservation minutes from last May or last April or last June or whatever. And I can tell you, because I just checked, for the Conservation Committee, there are precisely 0 minutes going back to January of 2016 on the town website. And I went to the Secretary of State's website, and you have to type in search words. So I typed in Hopkinton for one search bar, and below it, Conservation Committee, and the search returns nothing. And then I typed in Hopkinton Conservation Committee, and I got minutes. Okay? So you can get incredibly frustrated to the point of being unable to find these minutes, even on the Secretary of State's website. You have to know that you can go there. You have to choose the appropriate search terms, and then you go to the town's website. It's completely barren. So I would respectfully suggest that rather than reaching out to the heads of these committees, all of whose members you appoint, including their chairs, and suggest that they do this, I would respectfully suggest that you require that they post these meetings to the town's website on a timely basis.
The minutes.
Yeah, minutes, yeah. agendas.
Approved minutes.
Approved. Yeah, I'm not sure what the law is in Rhode Island. Typically, approved minutes are posted. Draft minutes in most states are public records, but I'm not sure about Rhode Island. But anyway, I think that clarifies this idea they're there, but they're not. You know, they're not really there where they're user friendly. I think maybe you need some help in tech support or something. And then I have a question, or just something I guess I find troubling and I'm mystified. You know, we don't have members listed for various committees, and we also don't have any description of what their function is. You know, it's just, I don't even think it's listed on the website for most of them. Yeah.
She has a list.
Right, but
It
I'm
says
saying
that
that, right, but every person that wants to investigate the various organs of the town government and the committee should be able to just go, hey, I'm going to go explore my town government. Let's say I just moved to town. I'd like to see what committees we have. Maybe I'd like to volunteer for one. I'd like to see what they do. I'd like to see who chairs them. You know, none of that information is out there. And that's pretty basic stuff. And it's relevant in this case because, to me, because I did start to get interested in the Conservation Committee, especially with this upcoming wind turbine amendment hearings from the Planning Board of the Town Council. I think, as we all know, the chair of the Conservation Commission hasn't been bashful about writing op-eds to the Westerly Sun, championing this idea. And I went back to look in the Conservation meeting minutes, which I previously could not find. I actually asked someone on the Conservation Committee to give them to me. And what I found was the agendas were there. And what I found was that wind and solar energy development in the town of Hopkinton were standing agenda items for the Conservation Committee. Now, I find that odd, but I don't know what their remit is. But I find that odd because, as we know, the Rhode Island Supreme Court has ruled that commercial wind and solar energy are manufacturing activities. And the production of wind and solar energy in commercial qualities is a commercial activity. That has nothing to do with conservation. That's not conservation. That's actually a form of industry. And it's a big one, worth billions of dollars. So I don't know why that's a standing agenda item for the Conservation Committee to think about, you know, which plots of land might be a good place to chop down trees and put up solar panels, or where to put a wind turbine. It seems to me that they're outside of the boundaries of their function by doing this. And then, as you know, they have spent a lot of time over the last 2 years, a lot of energy on that committee, working on ordinances, or proposed ordinances, one of which is this, they wanted to propose a wind turbine ordinance. But what's more troubling is that, you know, you had a workshop in January of 2018. Again, none of this was very readily apparent. You had to do some digging to find out what was going on. But in January of 2018, there was a workshop between the town council and members of the Conservation Committee. And one of the invited guests was the largest industrial wind energy operator developer in the state of Rhode Island. Sent their business development. I think her official title is business development. And then, lo and behold, in January of 2019, this same head of business development for green energy in Rhode Island, which operates the wind turbines in Johnstown, I believe, for Mr. D. Pasquale, was the invited guest of the Conservation Committee to talk to them about a wind turbine ordinance and the formulation of the same. So how is it that a Conservation Committee is inviting developers in, commercial developers in, to talk about developing land in Hopkinton? I think they're coloring outside the boundaries of their committee, and I won't go so far as to say they're operating in secret, but they're certainly, I'm not going to say they're hiding, but it's not exactly very easy to find out on the town's website what they're up to. So that's why these things are important. I also want to express to the council, because I don't think you're aware of it, I made some records requests recently, some dated back several months. And I've asked for some records that I still believe are public, that were refused to me. And the town clerk has been urged, let's say, I think, to consult with the town solicitor on my records requests, and the town solicitor, or the town clerk, after consultation with the town solicitor, refused some of them. So one category of records requests that was refused, these are both the same provision in the law cited both times, and I'm concerned about this generally. On one of the solar projects, there was quite a bit of correspondence back and forth with the developer in between the dates of the public hearing. It was rather substantive correspondence outside of the confines of the hearing where no one would really know about it. I had an issue with that. I requested copies of any correspondence between the developer and any town council members. And I was refused. And the section of the law that was cited in refusing my public records request was the one that basically says that it's meant to say correspondence between councilors and individual constituents are not public records. Well, that's because if I want to write, if I'm one of your constituents and I want to write a message to some member of my town council to complain about the noise from a neighbor or a pothole or whatever it might be, I may not be presuming that's a public record, and those sorts of correspondence between a constituent and a town council are not considered public records. But correspondence between developers that are proposing development in the town of Hopkinton and addressing these council members in their official capacity and or negotiating with them the terms of approval of their project, those are not covered by this provision, and this, by no stretch of imagination, should that sort of official business between a councilor and someone seeking zoning approval or permit be shielded from by the public records law being used as a shield and a sword. But even more concerning recently was, as you all know, because you all received it, the town council as a body received a letter from a trade association, the Rhode Island Home Builders Association. And I haven't seen the letter, but it's my understanding that the General Counsel of the Rhode Island Home Builders Association laid out some concerns for the town council to suggest that some of the activities that you had engaged in were not entirely legal. Those actions that were flagged by the General Counsel of this trade association were some of the same actions that I had protested about personally that the town council had engaged in. And so here you have trade association to town council, not even a single town council, but the entire town council as a body. I was refused a copy of that letter. Now, how can it be that it's not that when a trade association writes to a public body, a legislature that presides over our town, and that you're all the elected officials that are representing us, how can it be that that letter is secret? How can it be that that's refused? I think that was improper, but I also think that these two instances of refusing to allow citizens to have access to these records to know what is going on with their representative body, is wrong, and I hope you'll reconsider. I wrote on August 1st, I wrote to the town clerk protesting the refusal of this document and asking that you reconsider, and I hope that you will. By the way, one last thing on that. Just because the public records law might say that you may refuse to provide a document, that doesn't mean that you must refuse the document. There's no reason why the town should not provide it. This is not a personnel matter, and this is not any information that I'm not entitled to as a constituent, that all your constituents should be entitled to. And, okay, there's that. And then the last thing I just want to say is, I forget exactly when it was, but there was a date when this body voted to make Hopkinton a Second Amendment sanctuary. And I don't know who's in favor of that. Certainly some of the councilors were. But I think it's pretty clear, it should be clear to all of you, that that issue is a divisive one. I think the recent news of these recent massacres with assault rifles is obviously deplorable. And I just want to I hope that you'll reconsider the Second Amendment sanctuary proclamation, consider rescinding it. I know that the town council president had an interview with a radio host in which the radio host raised a question that I thought was very on point, where he said, why would you want to brand your town in this manner on such a divisive issue, knowing full well that even if a slight majority of the members of your town favored such a thing, there is certainly a very large minority that does not want that. So I said it at the time, it serves no purpose, and except to inflame people's passions on this subject, and I think it has no place in our local politics to be making these sorts of gestures.
Yeah, before I let you go, your third ask, I think, was something about the commissions and boards to have, what, a caption of what they do? Is that what, I guess that was...
Yeah, well, a lot of times...
I know, I got the other two, but I wasn't sure.
A lot of times you have when you
Mission
click...
statement.
Yeah, when you click on a board, it'll say, if you click on a board, a lot of times it's pretty easy, it's cheap, and it doesn't cost anything to have it go to a page, for the planning board or whatever. So it'll typically say, because you don't want to crowd all that information on the home page. So you click on planning board, and it goes there, and it says chair, members, has a paragraph. The planning board is the board that blah, blah, blah. Meets every first, if it was you, it would say meets every first and third Monday, right? So then people go, oh, got it. Or planning board meets first Wednesday of every month. That way, people kind of understand the cycle of the meetings, they understand who the chair is, they understand if they know somebody on the board and they're interested in, maybe they want to fill a vacancy. They see a name on the board they recognize, they can call them and say, hey, tell me about your experience.
Okay.
So it's got a lot of benefits.
Thank you. Anyone else?
Good evening, Steve Wheel, 11 Old Depot Road. I'm going to just, Eric kind of articulately just talked about my comments for the evening about the Second Amendment issue. I don't think it was more than 48 hours from the time that you guys passed that resolution or whatever proclamation that it was that about that time frame there was already a mass murder that was committed around the country soon after that. And we've seen a constant, as we all know, as we read the papers, watch the news, whatever, a constant stream of these just horrible mass murders. And I would just reiterate also that I would really suggest at a minimum, those town council members, or even those that may have a second thought on the issue, that maybe it wasn't the best idea, bring this issue up again. And try and have it put to rest. And at best, this issue should be on a town vote. If the residents of this town want our town to be a Second Amendment city, then put it on the election ballot. Let the people here put their numbers to it and vote in the majority and say, this is what we want to identify with. Because I think that's a reasonable thing to do. But to cater to a segment of people that were, and I don't think anybody really could argue this point, throughout the state that showed up that night, that was heavily advertised. Not many residents from here, from Hopkinton. It wasn't the right thing to do. And I spoke on that and gave my opinion shortly thereafter then also. And I would ask that those counselors that had a problem with it then, you know, try and not let this lay, because, you know, it's just a horrible thing. Most of these weapons of mass destruction, these assault weapons, is most of what we're talking about, and the extended magazines and the ability to kill. I mean, the shooting in Dayton, for God's sakes, 30 seconds to a minute, 24 dead, I think, something to that effect. Within 30 seconds to a minute. These types of weapons are used in war for a reason. And I would hope that we as a small town could use a little better common sense when it comes to these things. So, thank you very much for listening. I appreciate it.
Okay, anyone else? Yes.
I'm Tammy Walsh, Brazil Road. I just want to, one thing I want to say is I don't come to town hall very often to ask for information, but I did want to say that I did do it in the last month once, and Lisa was extremely helpful because I had no idea where to go, what to do. I had to go here, and I had to go there, and I had to get things. So I want to reiterate what everybody else has said, that she is wonderful, and I was really very appreciative of it. The other thing I'll touch on, with Eric talking about a landing page for the committees. You know, this was something that came up for me a while ago with the planning board when there was the issue with Tom Holberton, and, you know, I asked the question, how do people know what the charge of the committee is? And does everybody on the committee know that? Are they reminded of it? Do they know all these things? And so I think that, you know, what we've been talking about tonight is a really good idea to have that information up there. And even, you know, we have, I think, at least one commission that, you know, hasn't been active in a long time. If the charge is up there, and there can even be a link on it that would take people, like, if you're interested in serving on this committee. So when they go to the page, they find everything they need right there. So they're not, because I know there are other places on the website where it does say we're looking for people for various committees, but, you know, if you can have information that's available to people when they go to one place, I think that will really help a lot, and it might add to, you know, the citizens' engagement, which I think is something that we all want. I suspect you guys get tired of seeing the same people come into meetings, so if we could get some other folks to get engaged, I think that would be good.
Sounds good, Tammy. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Chief, Luther? Anyone else left?
Bill, you want to go?
You can go again, Frank, if you want.
You got another forum coming up.
Be careful what you ask for.
Thanks, folks. Next on my report, I just wanted to make folks aware, for some time now, well, since the deregulation of electricity, you can pick who supplies it to your house. If anybody's interested in, I guess, trying to save some money, I've been doing this for some time now, and there's a choice for suppliers. And I had one contract expire. These contracts don't cost anything. All they ask for is name and address and National Grid account number. And when my contract expired, I think I was paying about 18 cents a kilowatt for supply. I just got a new contract at $9.85. So it's going to save me probably $60 a month, because my 18-year-old son takes half-hour showers. So, but it's on the electricity supply, and a lot of folks are not aware of that. So if anybody is interested in saving money, or at least looking to see if you can save money, the good news is it doesn't cost anything. You can contract with anybody. You can break the contract. They don't ask for personal information, and you get an email confirmation, and it just starts the next billing cycle. So it's
What
really...
happens when there's a problem with National Grid?
Yeah, you still call National Grid.
I think that's been the thing that I've shied
Yeah,
away from
right.
that, because I wondered, okay, If I'm not
Look at
getting
the-
everything from National
Yeah,
Grid, when the
right.
power goes out, they'll look on that list.
So look at the electricity supply, and if you don't know where that is, or it's not very evident on the bill, you can call me, I'll point you right to the page on the National Grid bill, and I can calculate it for you, how much you'd save.
Sharon, can you follow on what you just said? Because if the power goes out, call National Grid. But what if you have this other
What if
contract?
National, yeah, what if
What is
National?
They don't provide the supply, so.
So it's got nothing to do, it doesn't
Just
affect
the
you in
cost
any way?
of bringing the electricity to the resident.
If everybody in Rhode Island did that, what happens to National Grid? I'm curious. Does that mean they go out of business?
Yeah, they're still doing.
Yeah, they'll raise their part of it.
Yeah.
We're gonna make money.
The state legislature, I think, just enacted something that speaks to this, and Brian Patrick Kennedy was pretty instrumental in doing that. But it's something that a lot of folks don't know about. I wouldn't know about it until I started looking into this, and then I said, geez, what am I doing here? So I just signed a 3-year
How does
contract
it
at
work?
90 with Direct Energy.
How does it work though? I mean,
Well, all right, so you're going to look and see what your electricity supply per kilowatt hour is. And then all you do is you can Google electricity suppliers in New England. And Direct Energy comes up, there's a host of companies.
where do they get their electricity?
I don't know, Sylvia.
There can't be all these different places
Yeah,
for
I don't know.
electricity.
What happens is you end up.
They get it from the same place as National Grid.
That's what I'm
Okay,
thinking.
I don't know, I didn't get that in.
It sounds really crazy.
I did that about 2 years ago. It's ambient out of Texas. And when you, like Frank said, he's right. When you look at the kilowatt hour from National Grid versus what ambient is doing, it's a year, and all the information's online. The bill comes from National Grid. When I lose power, every week it seems like, Steve, call National Grid, they come out. So
But
the only thing that changes is your kilowatts that you're paying per hour. It's a big savings.
And it's huge. Like I said, for
It
me,
really is.
I typically spend $240 a month, and it's going to get me under 200. So I just kind of let my, it slipped through my mind as far as the contract expiring with the prior company, and that was like almost 18 cents. It was a company out of New York City. I'm like, really? So I looked into it, and I switched over, and I should be starting with my new company, Direct Energy, this month.
Was your son going to college or dropping another 40 bucks?
Before we go, what's it? Yes, sir.
Supervises electricity from Direct Energy.
Oh,
We've had for the last 3 years.
Right.
The Rhode Island League of Cities and Towns passed legislation to the General Assembly to allow all the cities and towns to purchase it as a group without having to go through the formal bidding process. They allow them to do that at the prices that are considerable.
Yeah, so it's really great. Like I said, it's something that if anyone needs any help with it, let me know. I've been doing this for a lot of years. Again, I just locked into a 3-year contract at $9.85 per kilowatt hour, so it's pretty good. So, anyway, FYI. Next, town manager, what don't we do?
Thank you. I just have 3 items. The first one is the building official position. On July 10th, I convened a meeting with Vin Regassa, the town's labor attorney, the town of Richmond and Hopkinton staff and Hopkinton union representatives to discuss a possible shared services agreement for the position of building official with the town of Richmond. Because of the lack of availability of certified building officials in the state, this initiative seems to make pretty good sense. There's be more information coming. A second meeting has been scheduled for August 19th in Richmond, which will include the solicitors, the managers, and the finance directors from Hopkinton and Richmond to work on finalizing a contract between the two towns. And that contract will eventually come to the town council for final approval.
So is that building official going to be available 50% of this time for us and 50% of this time for Richmond?
It'll be, the proposal is 60% for Hopkinton and 40% for Richmond.
And so we would pay accordingly?
Yes.
Salary, 60/40?
25 hours in Hopkinton and 15 hours in Richmond. Secondly, the Cox Town telephone system. On July 16th, I met with Finance Director Brian Rosso, IT Director Chris Scheib, and 3 Cox representatives to discuss a complete upgrade of the town's telephone system. Our current antiquated system is now obsolete for Cox representatives, and they're requiring an upgrade to more current service programs. According according to the numbers that we've seen from them, we should save in the area about $2,000 a year, and the service should be significantly upgraded. This system is going to be tailored to the town's needs and serve the town hall, Thayer House, Crandall House, and the Department of Public Works. The town staff met again on July 22nd to review and confirm our proposed internal telephone system needs, which were then forwarded to Cox Communications for community plan development. More should be coming later on, but it should take probably 6 to 8 weeks before the system is designed and fully installed. But it should be significant.
So I have a question. I have a question. I know that we go out to bid for the phone service, but I think we did it several years ago. Do we do that every 3 years, every 5 years?
No.
No?
Well, that's a perpetual contract with Cox Communications.
So we don't try Verizon or AT&T, we don't go to any other company?
No, it's, I mean, you have to pull all the phones and wires out maybe 2 or 3 years and put in another one. And, you know, you get another carrier, you just have to change the whole system. It's just impractical.
I wondered what would be different. Do you know? What's different?
I think the big difference is going to be one main number, 3777777, and there's going to be a telephone tree. So all the departments are going to be on the telephone tree 1 through 9, and they'll go directly, and there'll also be a secondary phone in each one of the departments. So that, I mean, like when I call finance, you know, Chris always answers the phone, and most of the time I want to speak to Brian, so there's going to be 2 separate lines. The main line will be both phones, but there'll be individual numbers for each one. So it should be good. Keep you posted. And lastly, the landfill site inspection. Just very briefly, on July 18th, a meeting was held with engineers Robert Hoffman and Steve Cabral, along with planner Jim Lamphere, DPW Director Tim Teft, Foreman Dave Caswell, myself, regarding the newest section of the town's former landfill. Mr. Hoffman showed town officials exactly what type of remedial repair and maintenance work had to be completed and where it had to be done as mandated by DEM. And Hoffman Engineering is currently conducting some groundwater surface tests of the water on the site, and it's going to be a long road before we can determine what's in there and what remedial plans need to be conducted, and then finally an evaluation of whether or not it's going to be feasible to put solar on town property. But I mean, that's 24 to 48 months away. That's it.
Okay, thanks, Paul. Okay, last public forum. Anyone else wishing to be heard?
Just one comment. We happen to have Cox Communications service to our home and business. And there is one thing that I would like to make sure that Bill checks on. We had to buy an extra battery box to put in to the input that comes in from the street on Cox to maintain phone service when the power goes out.
Okay. I'll have to check.
Doesn't work without power.
Yeah.
And it doesn't work on the generator either.
Oh.
They designed the system.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just saying you might want to make sure that that's whatever way that they're doing it, that you don't end up losing power. It's like if you, when the power goes out here, you call my house, you don't get the home phone.
We'll check on it.
You can't call 911.
No, I can't.
Well, actually, it allows you for a short time. The battery supposedly allows you for a day or two to only make a 911, but it doesn't last very long, the battery.
Yes.
I'll make this brief. I just want to save myself a trip. I know I've given you guys a lot of information in your packets, but this is on the upcoming hearings. I'm not going to speak to this really. But I have a couple of things I want to give to you, and I just want to tell you what they are. I'm not going to go through them. One of them is just a lot of basic information from a website called National Wind Watch. They're just basic FAQs about all sorts of aspects of the technology, how big they are, how you transport them, how you integrate them into the grid, all that kind of stuff. But I don't, you're going to get an avalanche of material in 2 weeks, so I thought I might as well give some of this material to you now, and I will submit a copy of this for the record, knowing that I've already given it to you. The other thing is I couldn't possibly print this thing, but I'm printing the recommendations here. This is a 350-page document. I'm going to send you a link to it so that you can look at it if you want to. In Australia, which has a ton of wind turbines, because it's very windy and there's a lot of relatively uninhabited places, they have had a hell of a time with wind turbines. There's a huge foundation there that was established maybe 10 years ago called the Wabra Foundation to collect research and to make their own government officials aware of some issues. So the Australian Senate convened a select committee, the equivalent of our Senate. They have a very similar form of government. They convened a select committee on wind turbines. They worked for a few years, and they returned a whole series of recommendations. And I'm just giving you the recommendations, not the entire report. But the report does include, it's 350 pages, so it includes a lot of expert testimony, and it's organized by topics. But one of the things that caught my eye about this, and this is a couple of years old, a few years old, I've been involved in this issue for 10 years now, and what has been lacking has been regulation. It's been an unregulated industry. I actually had the privilege of meeting with Senator Blumenthal, Richard Blumenthal, when he was Senator-elect Richard Blumenthal, still Attorney General of Connecticut. And when we were explaining this problem to him, he's maybe the smartest guy I've ever met. Within no time, he caught the gist of the problem. He said, the problem with this, he went out and had a press conference, and he called for a moratorium in the state of Connecticut on wind turbine development. And he said, this is a lawless industry. And he said, what I mean by that is not that they're breaking the law. There's no laws. There are no laws. There's no regulations of any kind. There's no understanding of what to do to try to regulate everyone's rights and make them safe and all this stuff. So what's interesting about this document is that these recommendations are all geared towards describing a regulatory regime that didn't exist in Australia and it doesn't exist in the United States, and it for damn sure it doesn't exist in Rhode Island or Hopkinton. There's, for a national acoustic standard and so forth. But one of the things that figures prominently in here are, all sorts of abilities to monitor and take enforcement actions and so forth. And when we talked about this issue 10 years ago, low frequency sound, sometimes called infrasound, but low frequency sound, extreme low frequency sounds, we were characterized, even though there was abundant research going back decades, we were characterized as like people in tinfoil hats, waiting for the UFOs to arrive, and spending too much time on the internet. Well, this entire regime for Australia now is prescribing mandatory, a lot of research and a lot of mandatory investigation of and compliance with standards for this low frequency sound, which is where a lot of the harm comes from in wind turbines. So next time someone, I don't know, maybe.
That's why cows don't like it.
Right. See, there's no money to study these things, but there are, like in Wisconsin and Michigan and so forth, cows stop giving milk.
Yeah.
But you're wearing a tinfoil hat now, just want to tell you. So I just want to give this to you as background, and I'll send you the link to the report. And I did give you a copy of the packet that I gave to the planning board, okay? And one of the things in there, I gave you a copy of the regulations now that obtain for the entire length of Cape Cod 15 towns. The setback provision now through the Cape Cod Commission, which is a very, very highly regarded body and went through a lot of extensive work, the setback provision there is 10 times the rotor diameter. So on these wind turbines in Kingstown, that would be 3,250 feet. You can't find any place in Cape Cod that's 3,250 feet away from someone else's property, so it's effectively abandoned. And by the way, all the research suggests that that's inadequate. A mile is not enough. That's not a mile. The state of Connecticut did, just to finish that story, I think that meeting took place in, I don't remember, 2011, 2012, January of 2012 maybe. And the state of Connecticut did pass, the legislature did pass a moratorium on wind turbine development in the entire state, pending the formulation of adequate regulations, and it was temporary, except that temporary moratorium is still in effect, and you can't erect a wind turbine in the state of Connecticut. And they gave up because they just decided that, you know, by the time they finished writing the regulations, you wouldn't be able to build one anyway. It didn't make sense for the state of Connecticut. The other thing they concluded is that the wind resource in Connecticut is extremely poor. And I think the first page of the packet to the planning board is a document from the Rhode Island Department of Energy Resources that concludes that Rhode Island's wind resource is modest, which is a euphemism for poor. It's not great. And 95% of the wind resource in Rhode Island is offshore. So, I mean, we're going to talk about this a lot more, but I think you should keep in mind, you know, those things. And then there's one other thing I want to mention, sorry. The other thing is that we've gone through, I don't even know how many it's been, but we've gone through so many commercial solar project proposals that I can't even remember how many there were. And it's obviously been very controversial, and a lot of the motivation has been whether or not there's a place to put these proposals that make sense from an energy policy standpoint, right? Because we want to encourage renewable energy. But the other thing has been the revenue to the town is attractive because we don't have much of an industrial base. So we all admit that, you know, they produce revenue, and the town would like to find some ways to generate revenue that diversifies the tax base and is compatible with what we all want for the town. But we looked at solar projects that had a huge footprint, but they were 58 megawatts or 28 megawatts or 16 megawatts or 22 or 21 megawatts. I mean, they're pretty big projects, and the tangible alternative energy tax is $5,000 per megawatt, so obviously that adds up to quite a bit of revenue. A 400-foot wind turbine is a 1.5 megawatt machine that's going to produce, it's going to have a red beacon on the top, it's going to flash all night long, it's going to produce noise that's going to travel well over a mile under certain conditions. I don't mean loudness, I mean a different kind of harmful noise. It's going to produce flicker. It's going to be 3 or 4 or 5 times the size of a cell tower. You're going to be able to, if you have a clear view and you happen to be on a rise with a clear view, you can see it from 10 miles away. I can sit on the beach and I can see the wind turbines from Block Island. Those are 10 miles away. So it's quite a stunning package of impacts, including health risks. And the revenue to the town from one wind turbine would be $7,500 a year. I mean, what are we talking about here? You know, I mean, that's quite a lot of sacrifice for some pitiful amount of money. So if you put up 3, then you compound your problems pretty exponentially because they can do things that are bad when you put them up with each other, but your revenue doesn't go up by a whole hell of a lot. So this idea of it has a small footprint is completely false. The footprint in terms of, I mean, we talked about a project where they were going to build, recently, where they're going to build a 12-foot dirt wall so that you wouldn't be able to see it to satisfy butters. You know, these things, I could be listening to this 3/4 of a mile away, and it could be really bothering me. It could be doing worse than annoying me. Okay, so that idea of a small footprint just doesn't hold any water. Anyway, food for thought. I have 5 of these to do, so.
Real quick, Eric just reminded me of something. I have a friend that lives on...
Can you state the microphone better for the public forum and viewers?
Joan Road, Old Depot Road. I have a friend that lives on Quidnick Reservoir in Coventry. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that area, but if you get off 95 by the truck stop and you come up to West Greenwich, and all of a sudden you see these 6 beasts that are on your left-hand side that are wind turbines. So my wife and I and another couple went down to their home Saturday night, and they bought this property about 20 years ago, and when they designed their home, the bedrooms, living quarters were all facing Quidnick Reservoir. There are no jet skis. There's, I think it's maximum 5 horsepower on Quidnick Reservoir. I think it's 5 horsepower maximum on Quidnick Reservoir. So there's 6 of us there Saturday night, and we're sitting here and we're watching the gorgeous sunset across the Quidnick Reservoir. And I said to my wife, check off to the left over there. There's 7 red beacons, flashing lights from the wind turbines that I could see that were on 102 in West Greenwich and Coventry.
It wasn't Rudolph.
It wasn't Rudolph. There were 7 flashing.
That's where they are?
I can't.
Is that where they are? You said we're in...
You go down 102 in West Greenwich, and that's where you'll see the turbines. You can't miss them, Sharon. You come up the rise of the hill, and it's like by Sawmill Farm. It's right there. You go down probably 3 or 4 miles to go to the Quidnick Reservoir in Coventry on the lake, and that's where I could see the flashing lights. Daytime, I could see the turbines. So I said to my friend, do you get used to this? He said, haven't yet. What they had to do was they had to install, they have little balconies, my wife knew the correct term, little balconies where you can put a chair out there off their bedrooms, and you can sit and look at the pond, look at the sunset, whatever. He said, we don't use that anymore. He said, we have to put curtains in our bedrooms. He said, I could not sleep at night. He said, that flash, I can't tell you the exact word he used, but that flashing red light, he said, 7 days a week, 365 days of the year, he said, I got to look at that. What they did was he put another house, because it's a family compound. He lives in the first house, and his daughter bought the second house. She can't stand them either. I don't find them attractive. I don't find them elegant. I don't find anything about them. And I just visited. The last point I want to make is, and I don't expect you to be there Wednesday night because you spend enough time for the big bucks that you make, $2,225 for something. But anyway, at the planning board meeting on Wednesday, this project, proposed project Exit 1, the owner is a man by the name of John Palmer. He owns that property. Someone did some research and told me that he owns several pieces of property in Voluntown, Connecticut. Several pieces of property. So my first point was, it's not like the Field of Dreams, build it and they will come. Build it in Voluntown, Connecticut. Well, I didn't find out until I spoke to Eric, and he verified it. There's a moratorium. You can't build it in Voluntown, Connecticut. So I'll go to Rhode Island, right where the sign says, welcome to the Ocean State, state of Rhode Island, plus solar, plus wind turbines. It's not what we want to do. But this is more of a discussion that's going to be held Wednesday night, but I wanted to let you know about that flashing light. It is awful. If you ever get a chance to go someplace, I came from the doctor, I told you earlier today. I got on 295. I could see 4 right there on the horizon. You go down Route 14, you'll come up to 7 or 8 of them right there. It's just, I don't think it's the right thing to do, but thanks.
Okay.
Thank you for reminding me about the red light.
All right. Anyone else?
I want to complain. Can I take 2 minutes? It's not even going to be about any of this.
Okay.
So it's going to be very lighthearted, I promise you all. And I'm sorry for even doing it.
It's about the jets?
No, you talked about National Grid, and so it caught my memory banks. And because as we approach another winter, and my favorite subject matter, which is power outages and storms of any nature, which seem to render our particular block without power for days plus at a time. On average, 3 to 5 plus days every single time a tree branch hits the wire on our street. and puts us out of service, and because we're not near a school, a hospital, or some other institution that requires response, we literally have to wait for almost a week. And my question is to the town council, and I know this is something for other times maybe to chat about, but is there something we can do with National Grid to where, if the problem kind of exists year in and year out and nothing ever changes, could someone from their company, maybe with pressure from the town, maybe go out and look and say, maybe this isn't the best setup for this area? I mean, I know we've got trees. I lived in Maine for 10 years, a decade, in the mountains of Maine. I've experienced more power outages in this town for the length of time than I did living in the mountains in Maine with 5 feet of snow up to my roof.
Can we have the Public Works Director or workers check out that street and make a determination on what can be done, and they can encourage, sometimes they can make things happen quicker if it's a National Grid issue? Are there trees and branches around the wires?
That's not it. It's that we have
That's not
too
it?
few population. They put the people back on
No, wait a minute.
based on the population.
What I'm talking about is keeping you
Yes.
from losing power.
And that's what it is that they're running the wires through trees to get to the homes that are built in a pretty wooded area. And so, yeah, without
Public Works could check
without
out.
any kind of reassessment of what to do. So thank you. Anything would be helpful, and I appreciate it. I know you're tired, you've had a long night. I'll try to move away now. Thank you.
Anything that's
Sorry.
on the food court, Home Depot will also, we Gallagher Estates, all that around.
All those in favor?
Aye.